How's it going, everybody? We're going to jump right in with some horror bites. I just saw the new Creepshow on Shudder, and I am cautiously optimistic that it's going to be really good. It was nothing like, it didn't give you anything that I haven't really seen before. It wasn't anything that was like blew my mind, but it was good. They called in some star power. Tobin Bell from Saw was in the first episode. I've only seen the first episode. I know there's one more out right now, but I think it's going to be decent. The production value was good. So if you haven't seen it yet, it might actually be worth, just pay for Shudder for 1 month and see what you think. But yeah, that's my news for the day.
So actually, a little bit of a gaming update. So The Last of Us 2 finally got a release date announced for February 21st of 2020. So it's kind of a pretty packed time of the year for a lot of game releases around that time. But anyway, for those of you not familiar with the Last of Us franchise, it's kind of like a pseudo-zombie apocalypse game, which has kind of been fitting with our topic today. But it's kind of with a twist, whereas the zombies in this franchise are more based around a plant infection, like spores and fungi that affect people's brains and morph them into weird creatures. Very narrative-heavy game, but extremely well received, the first one. They actually had plans to make a movie of this too, but word's still out on that. But yeah, so we finally got a release date for that, and we're pretty excited. But with that, I figure we'll just go right into the topic then, eh?
Absolutely. Today we're going to be talking about which zombie apocalypse would be the hardest to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And we broke it down into 3 topics.
Pretty broad topics.
Yeah.
Or like areas, like types of zombie apocalypse, I should say. So
the first one we're going to talk about is Romero zombies.
Mm-hmm.
Classic zombie, kind of what everyone kind of thinks of as zombies.
Yeah, slow moving, maybe not trying to eat your brain, at least one way or another, your flesh, at the very least.
The second one is 28 Days Later zombies. Those are a lot faster.
Mm-hmm.
Rage filled.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just out to eat, they're out to kill.
Yeah.
And then the third one we're going to talk about is Resident Evil zombies, which are
more like the super zombies, like weird creatures and stuff like that.
On a different kind of level.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the first one, let's talk about Romero zombies.
Yeah. Romero
zombies are, Romero really took like a more biblical approach, if you want to call it that, of they're raised from the dead.
Mm-hmm.
They very much like not...
They weren't infected by any sort of virus.
No,
they
literally
crawled out of the grave.
Exactly. And when they weren't out for brains, or when somebody got bit by one of those zombies, it didn't automatically mean
you were getting transformed into a zombie.
Exactly. It wasn't until people died that they then were reanimated as zombies.
Yep.
They were pretty slow moving.
Mm-hmm. A lot of them are very almost skeletal too. Like some of them are in various states of decay.
Yeah. So
not necessarily bound by science or physical body limits or anything like that sort. So more in line with The Walking Dead too.
Yeah.
Kind of similar in that vein. The Walking Dead kind of bridged that gap a little bit though of if you get bit, you're going to get turned eventually too though. So they're a little bit more modern in that regard. But
yeah. They did The Walking Dead did show though that you didn't have to get bit. It was
you were already infected too. But if you got bit, it spelled certain death pretty much. Yeah.
And the Romero zombie is the what everything's based off of, really. And it's funny because this is almost like a little transition from one to another. My wife has recently been watching catching up on iZombie. I'm sure you know about it, being a comic book guy. I don't know if you've ever seen the show.
I started watching the first couple seasons.
It's a pretty funny show. Yeah. I like it.
It's definitely lighthearted.
I like how stupid, her name's Liv Moore. There's a company called Fillmore Graves. Yep. I love that. It's so dumb, but whatever. But they actually consistently refer to the zombies, if they get to a certain state of zombification, they refer to them as Romero zombies, which is funny though, because those zombies are more of the rage-filled hunting and killing zombies that we talk about with the 28 Days Later, but they still refer to them as Romero zombies, I think just because they've gone full zombie and they're not like the human zombie hybrid from the show.
So I think probably in terms of all the zombie apocalypse we've seen depicted, both from film, television, etc., probably the classic slow-moving zombies are probably be the most easy to survive in. Obviously, no scenario involving zombie apocalypse is going to be easy to survive in, but I feel like comparatively, this is probably going to be the easiest, just because easier to avoid. They're slow moving.
Transmission isn't as
Yeah,
scary.
yeah. Getting bit or etc. isn't necessarily a death sentence. It's like, yeah, you're injured, but which is shitty, but at the very least, at least you're not going to just die just because you got bit or it hurt somehow. But I think so. Realistically, the classic one's probably the easiest.
Yeah, absolutely.
From there, it escalates though.
The next two we're kind of on the fence about. We're gonna move into 28 Days Later zombies, but we're not sure which one between these two. So we're gonna hash it out right now.
Between the 28 Days Later or the Resident Evil type zombies, but yeah.
So we'll break that down. 28 Days Later, I coming into this was thinking more that it would be the 28 Days Later zombies because the transmission.
Yeah, the mode of transmission.
Mode of transmission is so easy to be infected. I mean, it's airborne. It can go through the skin, a bite, whatever. So just the simple surviving, not becoming a zombie, is much harder. And then once the zombies are infected, they turn into super beasts.
Yep.
Copyright Rob Zombie.
Yeah, and we of course acknowledge that there are people out there who are going to be like, oh, 28 weeks later, things aren't actually zombies, yada yada yada. Fine. I mean, your opinions are your own, but it's still a zombie movie.
Yeah,
sorry, I hate to break it to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't
We're not going to get that much into it, but But so no, I actually do agree with sentiment in terms of mode of transmission. Probably the most hard to survive in terms of avoiding becoming a zombie would probably be. I'd probably have to agree with that. But overall, I would definitely say it's clearly, obviously harder than surviving a Romero apocalypse. But just for the simple fact that they're sprinters. You can see the ultimate culmination of that if you've seen the World War Z film, which, complete departure from the source material of the book. But of course, we won't get into that. That's a whole other rabbit hole you want to fall down. But yeah, so just the simple fact that they're able to run, that they're hyper aggressive, they're not easily distracted. Like when they zone in on a target, like you're not going to turn them away with like loud noise or anything like that. Like no, they see you, they're coming for you. Period. So yeah, I think that regard pretty scary. It's just the idea of trying to scrounge for supplies and food or like shelter and stuff like that sort of scenario too, also extremely difficult. I think too, if I remember correctly, like they were still able to be put down with relatively normal means though. Like it didn't require a headshot or anything like that, right? I'm pretty sure it was
I think you're right.
I'm pretty sure like just simple mowing them down with bullets largely would do it, if I remember correctly. But still, nonetheless, I'd still say that was slightly hard. That'd be harder than I think than the slow moving one.
Well, and it's not like they have any rules as to whether, it's not like they sleep, and it's not like there's rules as to whether they can be out at night. So it's not like there's any time of day that would be easier to find supplies.
Yeah, exactly. Because whatever advantages you might have night versus day, they're going to have the same exact advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah, and you never know. You never know if they're just right around the corner.
Yep. And so moving into the Resident Evil zombies, this one gets a little bit out there because obviously you don't just have the zombie, like in that sort of universe, you don't just have the zombies themselves, which are kind of a mix between like the classic Romero one and then like the other crazier ones, because you have different types of zombies or species and like other monsters and stuff to deal with. Like you have these giant weird abominations of science made by this mega evil corporation,
Yeah, and like Tyler said, there's so many different types of zombies too. It's not just in the Resident Evil. It's not just one, because you have, like you said, those big abominations, the guys with the hammers and whatever. There's also the weird Demogorgon mouthed ones.
The lickers, of course, the weird brain frog things.
Yeah, so there's so many. Where we kind of started questioning which one would be more difficult to survive is when we started thinking about, not only are there so many different kinds of zombies in Resident Evil, but you also have this giant multinational underground corporation working to basically wipe out the few cells of humans that are left.
Pretty much.
So you're fighting zombies and you're fighting this corporation, and
not to mention starvation, secure shelter, everything, all the above. Yeah. Then, and like I think honestly, what you mentioned too about like the mode of transmission is probably just the one saving grace about this sort of environment. I mean, it's probably obviously like the mode of transmission. This one's either getting injected with some sort of virus or getting bit by a zombie. So like between those two, I mean, which is kind of debatable because like in the games you can like obviously if you refer to the source material, if you're getting bit, like obviously you just use a healing spray and you're good sort of thing.
Yeah, so
but,
that's what I was going to mention is I didn't think about that until right now. Is that in the Resident Evil there's cures.
Yeah,
there's always a chance you can come back.
There.
Yeah,
that's true. It's very true. So let's kind of if we kind of reel this back and kind of go back to look at just different like means of survival. I think we could probably agree that in terms of just finding shelter and building secure shelter, easiest would probably be the classic Romero's.
Yeah.
Or even like the Walking Dead, which is that weird bridge one, still pretty easy because they're slow moving relatively. And even in the Walking Dead too, they kind of depict that the bigger threat, like 9 times out of 10, isn't necessarily the undead; it's other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like for regards to shelter and finding supplies, Romero probably the easiest. And I'm not sure honestly how I'd feel rather between 28 weeks later or days and because I mean on one hand you have intelligent people on like the Resident Evil side of things, not to mention giant monsters and shit patrolling the sky and et cetera, but then on the 20 weeks later thing it's like, you know, they're ravenous, they don't stop, they just keep coming, they're not slow moving, you never have a chance to stop and take a breath, you know.
Yeah, I don't really know which one. I guess my gut says 28 weeks later would be slightly easier, just because I'm thinking in Resident Evil like how broad the Umbrella Corporation's like tentacles.
Well, the surveillance was too. They had satellite.
So where would you go that you didn't like? In the first movie, she wakes up in this huge mansion that just. It's like this massive mansion that's just like a secret front door to the Umbrella Corporation. So how do you know that you're not hiding out in one of their secret front doors and they're going to come up from the floor and pop you while you're sleeping or something?
True. It really... The more I talked about it, the more I was like, okay, yeah, maybe maybe it would be slightly easier than 20 weeks later because at least you don't have like you don't have this weird like super military corporation constantly monitoring you via satellites and sending monsters after you actively and stuff, and not to mention kill squads, etc. So yeah, maybe you're right around that. Maybe you're right on that front. Probably would be slightly easier. And then so what about, and so like you said, probably avoiding becoming a zombie. Hardest probably 20 weeks later. Yeah. Just because of the airborne, just the means of transmission, hardest to avoid. They had to quarantine off entire sections from what I remember of the movie in the cities and stuff like that, just to avoid those contaminated areas. I
guess for all of them, it's I guess in all of them, the human factor plays a big part because you don't know who you can trust. Like you touched on that a bit ago about how 9 times out of 10 it's the humans. They're the issue.
In which case, I think again, Resident Evil the hardest because of like the level of technology and stuff they have at their disposal.
Yeah, no, for sure. 28 weeks later, or 28 days later, I almost feel like in that sense, that would be the easiest. The humans really seemed in that movie to band together more and be looking out for each other. Saw what happened in
Walking Dead.
And even Romero in Night of the Living Dead, I mean, at the end, the guy dies not from a zombie, but from humans not trusting each other, and in that case, racism. So, but in that case, for the humans, the human factor to it, I think I'd rather be in the 28 days later world.
Yeah, very true. Because I mean, that you have to think too, like in that movie setting, 28 days later and 28 weeks later, how there were still sections of society and civilization that were still up and running. Like they largely just quarantined off the areas that were unsafe, and so they were still able to like generally provide for people
and have a society.
Exactly, just kind of like segmented off from the dangerous areas. It's like the Wild West sort of thing in the
And Night of the Living
Romero.
Dead, we didn't really get that far
Yeah,
to
no.
see. And then,
But if you look at The Walking Dead, it was very much a Wild West sort of setting.
yeah. Yeah, and I mean, just roaming bands of survivors.
All right. Do you have any other last minute thoughts on this subject?
I think no.
Very good. Okay. Well, did you have any other suggestions for films and stuff that people should see?
Yes, so one of my favorite parts of the show is suggesting movies to people that are probably under their radar, unless you're like a huge horror buff like me who's watched
Constantly watching everything that comes
literally
out.
everything. So all right, so today I'm gonna suggest Night of the Demons. It's one of my like guilty pleasures. I don't know why, but I keep going back to these movies, and they're not good movies. They're really corny. I love the practical effects they use in them, but I actually just went back and rewatched one, and it reminded me that they're actually Halloween movies. The whole thing takes place when kids go for like a Halloween party to this mansion that turns out to be, I don't know if you want to use the word haunted, but haunted by demons, and they start possessing the kids. And there's like this lore, this backstory about the mansion and the demons and why they can't leave the mansion and how they're trying to like possess these kids so they can leave the mansion. But it's really just a lot of fun, cheesy horror. And but I think it's the practical effects they used. It just really, I was like, this is what horror should be like.
Yeah.
So if you've never seen the Night of the Demons movies, I wholeheartedly suggest them for a fun Halloween binge. They did 3 with the original series, and then they remade it with Edward Furlong. I just watched the remake the other night. Edward Furlong and Shannon Elizabeth, and
Interesting.
they messed with the story a little bit. I didn't like the remake as much as the originals at all. I mean, it's Edward Furlong and Shannon Elizabeth, so that's who they could find for that movie. So that should tell you something. But the original Night of the Demon series, go check it out. And with that, I'll toss to Tyler.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to suggest kind of like a cult classic horror film, horror comedy, I guess you could more call it than anything. So some of you may have possibly heard about The Toxic Avenger. Came out in 1994. Very silly concept, basically about some nerdy kid who kind of has like a Joker style origin story. He falls into a vat of chemicals, but instead of becoming like an evil clown, he essentially just becomes some like grotesque mutant monster guy with a mop as a weapon. It's very silly, very over the top. From what I know, it was very when it came out, it was almost completely unheard of. I don't think it took a while, if I remember correctly, for it to actually become kind of popular and actually get a following.
Yeah, I think it's the whole reason we have Tromaville, like really? the production company. And I mean, most of you probably have never even heard of that production company. They make really, but yeah, it was like a big cult.
Yeah, like it kind of came from out of nowhere. And I want to say there was a comic series or something, either based on it or if that was stemmed from it.
I know there's a cartoon.
Is that what it was?
I know there's a cartoon. It was like a Saturday morning cartoon.
Pull it up here.
And then there was at least one sequel.
Yeah, as far as I know. Let's see.
But the Toxic Avengers was a cartoon. I want to say it looked like probably 1994-ish, 94, 96, somewhere in there.
And I'm actually reading here that there were plans for a reboot.
Of course there are. There's plans for a reboot for everything.
2010, so probably not much chance of that then. Apparently Arnold Schwarzenegger was in talks to play the Toxic Avenger himself in May of 2013. But yeah.
But yeah, I also endorse Tyler's pick. If you haven't seen Toxic Avenger, it's really cheesy.
So, actually, I'm just reading here, too. Apparently, as of December 10th, 2018, Legendary Pictures has won the rights to reboot the film. So, this could very well happen, knowing Legendary.
Yeah, I don't know. With Legendary behind, we might see like a little bit grittier. Because Toxic Avenger was really silly.
Yeah,
it was really light.
Silly. Yeah.
So, this one might be a little bit grittier, too.
Mm-hmm. This could be interesting. Well, it's got my attention again. So, but yeah, go ahead and watch the classic Avenger film.
Now that there's going to be a reboot, you got to go watch the original, so you know.
Yeah, if you're just like bored, maybe this time October at some time, and you're not sure what to watch, just grab some alcohol, get yourself under the influence, and have a good time laughing at this silly movie. But yeah, all right. And with that, I think that's probably going to close out this episode.
Yeah. So thanks for listening to Speaking of Scary. We appreciate it, and
we'll see you next time.